Hey everybody, it is late at night and I am Norman. As many of you know, I love a good field watch. Tonight we're going to be looking at two of them. Which two? I'm glad you asked. Tonight we'll be looking at the CWC G10 Sapphire and my vintage A17A. Well, mostly vintage. We'll look at these two watches side by side. I'm going to assign points in various categories to each one, and we'll see which one comes out on top. So let us begin. Alright, so for each category that I'm going to go over, I'm going to give each watch a score from 1 to 5, 5 being the best, and 1 being horrible. And the first category is case. For the A17A, we see that it has a nice brushed case, very solid. These are an upgrade to the A11s, so they are parkerized, which is a process that avoids tarnish and some other stuff that I don't recall right now, but it's an improvement. I'm going to give this case a 5 out of 5. It is just solid. This case is a little tank. The CWC is also brushed, and this case is indestructible, and it looks amazing. However, it is kind of thick, like distractingly so. So I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. The next category is style, and I mean, yeah, just look at that. What an amazing looking watch. So, yeah, I'm going to give this a 5 out of 5. And even though this is a contemporary watch, its design is based on vintage pieces with heritage. So for style, I am also going to give this a 5. The next category is water resistance, and being a vintage piece, and even back in the day when these were produced, I don't think they were exceptionally water resistant. I really wouldn't trust this thing in anything more than rain, maybe. So I'm going to have to give it a 1 out of 5 for water resistance, sadly. As for the CWC G10, this is their G10 Sapphire, so it's been upgraded. It has a screwed down crown and 200 meters of water resistance. So you could take this anywhere that you could take a dive style watch. So for water resistance, I'm going to have to give this thing a 5 out of 5. The next category is crown. And this crown is not a screwed down crown. It's a little bit large, kind of distractingly so, but that does make it easy to operate. But I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. I mean, just look at how it kind of sticks out there. It is oversized, that's for sure. As I mentioned, the CWC has a screwed down crown, and it's nice and compact. This is a quartz watch, so you're rarely going to be using this. And because it's a screwed down crown, it's really solid, safe, and you can kind of trust it when you're underwater. So I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. The next category is crystal, and boy, is this one amazing. That crystal is so phenomenal. It is actually one of my favorite characteristics of this watch. It really makes the piece look just brilliant. It's so fun to look down and see that crystal. But it is acrylic, so you really can't beat on it and have it survive without getting scratches and whatnot, which is fine. Way back in the day, people put these things through all kinds of stuff and they had acrylic crystals, but I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. As its name informs us, this crystal is sapphire. It is completely utilitarian. It's not totally flat. It is barely domed, which looks nice on this watch. and being sapphire, it is really tough. It will shatter if you impact it hard enough, but for use as a tool watch, sapphire is so great. So I'm going to give this a 5 out of 5. The next category is hands. And I absolutely love syringe hands. I feel like they look even better than the sword hands that you see in like A11s and whatnot. And these still have lume in there. I think that they've been restored. Same with the dial. That's why I mentioned this as being mostly vintage. But these hands just look so great. And look at that seconds hand. So cool. Yeah, I love those hands. So I'm going to give these a 5 out of 5. On the CWC, we see that it has pencil hands. Just fully utilitarian. Same with the seconds hand. It's white for legibility, which is great. Just super bare bones. And because they're so bare bones, I'm going to give them a 4 out of 5. They're very legible, but yeah. The next category is lume, and again I suspect these hands have been restored because the lume does work. I'll charge it up a little bit and see what they look like in this light. So you can kind of see them glowing there. They don't glow terribly bright and they fade really quickly. Because of that, I give them a 2 out of 5. You're not really going to be utilizing the lume on this watch. And of course, the CWC is also lumed. So let's see what that looks like. Look at that. That is some impressive lume. This is the kind of lume that you notice when you walk into a dim room. Even if you weren't outside, but you're walking into a room that's dimmer than the one you're leaving. Yeah, you notice it. So I'm going to give this lume a 5 out of 5. The next category is movement, and this is a mechanical watch. It is vintage, and the movement's not doing bad. I haven't serviced it yet. I really should. It's a little bit slow, which makes it easy to adjust the time and get it on track again. And being manually wound, it's not too terrible to do that. You're already operating the crown. So usually when I wind this watch in the morning, I'll have a clock nearby and tweak the time so it's spot on. And because it's so vintage, I'm a little bit nervous about it. You really can't knock it around quite as hard as a quartz watch. So for that reason, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. The CWC is quartz, and I just feel like quartz movements, to me, kind of come across as sort of indestructible. I'm sure they aren't, but they feel less delicate than a mechanical watch, and it allows you to just pick the watch up and go. You really only have to worry about it when the battery dies. And on this particular piece with its water resistance, that's going to cost me when it does, because I'm going to send this into CWC and have the water resistance checked and everything, which is what I should do periodically anyway. So I'm going to give this movement a 5 out of 5. The next category is lugs. And you can see that these are drilled lugs. They're pretty thick and tough. They look great on this watch. All in all, just really nice. I'm going to give them a 4 out of 5. And it's a little bit unfair to the A17 because I kind of gave it that score in contrast to the CWC G10 Sapphire, because these lugs have a fixed bar, so they are absolutely indestructible. This bar will never go anywhere. It is a part of the case. So I'm going to give these lugs a 5 out of 5. The next category is size, and as you can see, this is a vintage-sized watch in the vein of really vintage field watches. So it is absolutely tiny, which is quite divisive. Even people that don't mind vintage size watches might find this one a bit off-putting because it is really tiny. It's even smaller than the vintage Space Views. I think this is a 32mm watch. Tiny. Because of that divisiveness, even though this is a properly sized watch for its era, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. The G10 Sapphire is 36mm, which in my opinion is a perfect size for a modern day field watch. Field watches should be on the smaller size, in my opinion, but I'm glad there are ones that are larger so that we have options. People who have larger wrists can go for those, but I find 36 to be really dialed in. Kind of like dive watches at 40 make perfect sense. 36 on a field watch, spot on. So I'm going to give this a 5 out of 5. The next category is cool factor, and with this crystal, with it being vintage, and just the overall aesthetics of this watch, definitely have to give this a 5 out of 5. This watch is also extremely cool. The only thing for me is the thickness of the case. It is pretty distracting when it's on the wrist. If somehow it could be done thinner and still have that water resistance and whatnot, then I would have to say this would be a 5 out of 5. As it is, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. The next category is heritage, and well, yeah, this watch is full of it. I mean, the case is vintage, the movement is vintage, the dial is probably restored, same with the hands, but yeah, you can't mess with the heritage of this watch. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. There is also a ton of heritage behind CWC and behind this design. However, this is definitely an upgrade with the sapphire and the water resistance and the chubbier case and whatnot. It harkens back to heritage, but this is definitely a contemporary watch. Because of that, I give it a 3 out of 5. And the final category is overall usability. And if it weren't for the probably 0 water resistance, this one would be a tough little tank, but having to kind of watch that you don't ever get water on this thing kind of lowers the usability a bit. You have to take this off if you're going to be anywhere near a bunch of water. If you're outside washing things or whatever, probably a good idea to take this off. Because of that, I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5. The G10 Sapphire is extremely water resistant, extremely tough with that sapphire crystal. You can pick it up and go because it's quartz. This thing is extremely usable. You could wear it snorkeling, shallow dives and stuff. Just, yeah, this thing can go anywhere, do pretty much anything. So I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. Alright, and the final score on these watches, assuming I can do basic arithmetic, the A17A scores 49 points. The CWC G10 Sapphire gets 60 points. So the G10 Sapphire is definitely the winner. Mainly because it's modernized, water resistant, sapphire, stuff like that. As a field watch, it just kind of raises this to a whole nother level. So there you have it, 2 absolutely brilliant field watches. One is just a tank, and the other one is vintage and just amazing looking. And even though the CWC kind of won in a landslide, I personally prefer the A17A, and that's the watch that gets quite a bit of wrist time amongst these two. Thanks for watching.